this very hot summer day. I am calling the meeting to order. All rise for Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
And one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What'd you say? I think they're moving around. I just don't throw anything at me, right? So, yeah. Well, welcome again. Welcome, everyone. The first items on the agenda are the homeowners associations. Anyone here online or in the room from Edgebrook Downs? Adam Lerner. Okay, I take that as a no. Lasavane, Matt Weiss. All right, that moved quick. Now it's time for public comment. Anyone for public comment? If you do, please stand, Aaron, please stand up at the podium, turn the mic on and state your name, et cetera. You know how to do it.
I think it's on.
Yeah.
My name is Aaron Underwood. I own property in multiple private road HOAs. That's what my comments are about tonight. I think you call it the Public Safety Grant Program. I've been through 3 road constructions across those HOAs, and I got a 4th one coming up. And I'm glad to see the village is doing something to try to provide some assistance for private roads. But if you ask me, money wouldn't be my first ask. I would want engineering resources and experience. Because the problem is, as an HOA, you do this once every 20 years. There's nobody left on the board that went through it before. And it seems like every time I've been through this, it's like reinventing the wheel. So the first thing that I would want would be maybe access to a qualified engineer. Now, in one of my cases, we actually did that and it worked great. That was a bigger HOA. Smaller HOA, we didn't do that. We couldn't do it. It's too small. It's too small to hire one. So I think that's an area the village could really provide a lot of assistance, and it gets you impact on quality because you're involved in the RFP and the evaluation of the specs and the testing of the work. It also gives you an opportunity to introduce some money savings if you can figure out a way to consolidate bids across multiple HOAs that are doing the roads. The proposal that I read, though, the grant, it just seems so easy to poke holes through. I just don't think it's baked. It seems unfair, unworkable. It's just not. I feel like it's going to be something that if you did this, you're going to be 2, 3, 4 years down the road and then have to take a step back. And my thought would be just get it right to begin with, then do it. You don't have to play with real money and take real risk. So one suggestion I would have is, why don't you simply survey some of the private road HOAs, get actual road costs for the last 3 or 4 years. Then that'll give you a data set that you could apply some rules and figure out how a grant process would work. Some of the challenges are going to be, this is, as I said, like an every 20-year kind of issue or need with an HOA. So an annual grant program is almost by definition at odds with that. I don't think an HOA is the right unit of fairness in this. I think a household would be more appropriate. And that's one way you could get around issues with big and small. I know it's staged as a pilot program, but as I said, I think you got real risk and real money involved in doing it that way. I would suggest to do a survey first, develop a model that works against the survey, then do your pilot. I would guess that half of the HOAs in the village aren't even real entities. They're not real organizations. They don't have bank accounts. How is that going to work? Who signs the contract? Who's making the commitment? What if you got homeowners in that subdivision that don't want to do it that way? How do you reconcile that? I don't know. The timing on these projects is always such a challenge because your bids expire. Even when you do get a bid, you got to get the homeowners to all vote and agree on it. And it's usually some kind of super majority. So these things get voted down and then you try again. And then, but you can't because you got to get another quote because your other quote expired. So then once you do get something approved, you got to collect money. You're asking people to write checks for $12,000, $15,000, $20,000. You're going to have to wait until they pay the money because it's the HOA. You don't have any ability to borrow money. So I don't know how the grant program fits in the context of all of that complicated timing. I just feel like that's not thought through yet. So my suggestion would be simple. If you really want to get going on this, I would urge you in a direction of an engineering support initiative of some sorts, and get some experience working with the HOAs and get some knowledge. Then you'll be in a better position to do some sort of grant or some sort of money award. And, as a final aside, I assume the motivation for this is that observation that there's some sort of inherent unfairness in the way that the village developed with the way they pay for public and private roads. So my plea would be, don't make that worse by adding a new level of unfairness into the situation. Thanks.
Thanks for your comments. Benjamin? Oh, another one? Okay, yep.
Hi, my name is Howard Michael. I live in the Glenstone subdivision. First of all, I want to thank all the board members, trustees, the president for doing such a wonderful job in this community. I mean, I love Long Grove. You guys have really done a spectacular job getting this place up to par, and thank you for all your efforts. The reason I'm here is to talk about the issue of using village funds to repave private roads in subdivisions, HOAs. My own subdivision, we just did this about 7 or 8 years ago. We paid about $12,000 a piece to redo our roads. We never thought of coming to the village and asking for any money. Each one of us ponied up to $12,000, and we fixed our own private roads. There's a question in my own mind as to whether or not the Illinois Constitution limits public funds to public purposes only and not to private funds. So, I mean, you have a city attorney. I'm sure he has studied this and make sure that it's legal and everything that you want to do with that. But my first feeling would be not to use it for, I mean, we all live in very fancy subdivisions here. We're all well-heeled people. There's no reason for spending village fund money on private subdivision roads. Let every other HOA member pony up for themselves. Use the money for public purposes. Use it for improving the park systems. Use it for a bike path on Cuba Road. Use it for things, playgrounds for the children or something like that. But putting the money in for wealthy, well-heeled people in their subdivisions just so they can have a few more bucks in the pocket, it doesn't just sit right with me and a lot of the homeowners and a lot of the people in my subdivision. And it's not really consistent with the village policy either. Long Grove has a comp plan that goes over a longstanding policy of encouraging private roads, specifically to help and maintain no tax levy policy. And how does this spending of the village funds on the same private road square with this stated policy? So I'll make it short and sweet. I would say that please don't spend village funds on private subdivisions, homeowners associations, roads. Spend it so that every one of us could use it. It's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Benjamin Matthews?
My name is Benjamin Matthew from 4369 Oakleaf Lane here in the village. My first comment is about the circular driveway that we have in front of Village Hall here. I really appreciate how we have the reflectors by the little bridge, which helps drive around it. I'm just wondering if there's a way we can put reflectors around the circular driveway here, because especially late at night, it gets really dark, and it would help to see the edge of the road better, or those of us who may park over there. My second issue is about the new signs that were put up right where the Quick Trip is, announcing the meeting regarding that property. And I definitely think they're a big step in the right direction. They look great. But my only recommendation with those signs is I believe there should be something on there indicating the date and time of the meeting concerning any given property, because I vaguely remember the older signs used to have the date and time and address of where the meeting would be held. And I know you just answered the question for me, Mr. Sparkman, but has there been any updates about 4359 Illinois 22 and a special use permit? Thank you.
Yeah, no updates on 4359, and we can look into the other requests that you brought up.
Any other public comment? If not, I'm going to ask Chair Kritzmeyer to give us an update. Are you planning to do that on the Children's Lighthouse project? Thank you.
Hi, Ann Kritzmeyer, Chair of the Long Grove PCCBA. Got my career path backwards, don't I? So last week, the PCCBA concluded the public hearing. It was the second of two meetings on the Children's Lighthouse, basically early childhood learning center that is proposed for really the intersection of 83 and Old 53 near the Crossings subdivision in Buffalo Grove. The first meeting was mostly applicant presentation and a lot of public comment. Much of that was, of course, from the Crossings, not all of it. There were concerns about traffic, which is, if anybody's tried that, it's already terrible. So absolutely understood that. They submitted a traffic study and so on. Concerns about coordination with Buffalo Grove. There were also a good handful of public comments in favor of this kind of business in Long Grove. Not necessarily at that particular, property, but definitely in favor of this kind of business in Long Grove. And one person even drove down to the one in the city to look at what that traffic looked like. The PCCBA had a lot of questions, of course, mainly about traffic, impact on neighbors, parking, light, sound, the visual impact. Some neighbors are used to 20 years of green space. Unfortunately, they don't own that property, and that was commented on by the commission. The appropriateness of the business, public comments, their financial wherewithal and commitment. A lot of questions of our village engineer on various topics. Considered other possibilities. That's currently zoned office research. So by right, not needing a text amendment or a PUD, that could be an office building and we asked the engineer for some different thoughts on what that would look like. And at top capacity, that would probably add even more traffic if that were to come. Ultimately, the commission agreed to approve it. The zoning text amendment, the applicant asked for preliminary and final PUD. We did agree to that pending some very specific work items to be worked out with staff and not come back to the PCCBA. Any questions? Anything else I should have said? Okay.
No, thanks for your work. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Ann.
Thanks for that report. Then moving right along, public safety reports. Now we have Lieutenant Thomas Lex is moving into a new role. And we have a new lieutenant that's going to be our liaison with the sheriff police. His name is Matt Harmon, Lieutenant Matt Harmon. He's in the back of the room. I don't know if you want to say anything to us or not. If you do, you're going to have to get up to the microphone. All right. Thank you. Welcome, by the way. And thank you for being here. Harmon.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Harmon. I'm a lieutenant with the Sheriff's Office. The last 13 years I spent in investigations and transferred to our patrol division. The village has been extremely welcoming, and I look forward to being your new liaison. I'm going to be completely reachable to all the staff members of the city council. I'll give you my contact information, so obviously they can help get in communication with me whenever that's needed as well. I'm here to support the village in any way that I can, and I will do my best to serve you. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Any questions?
I have a question. Is there a reason that they keep rotating you fellas through the town? Do we have a bad reputation here?
No, not at all. Actually, this is a very desirable position to be in, being your liaison. This is a great village, as you know. Tom Lex was promoted to lieutenant, which is the same rank as me, and his new assignment is going to be more of an administrative role in the downtown area. So it is typically the patrol level supervisors, whether it's sergeants or lieutenants, that each have a contract that they staff and liaison for. So with my transition to the patrol division and his to the administrative division, I'm fulfilling that space.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe a little unfair question, but in light of our 250th July 4th celebration, how was the fireworks in Long Grove? Did we issue any citations or did we make any arrests? Because my house was shaking. I mean, just shaking. Do you have anything to report on like how we did or what we can do maybe next year to better prepare for let's say, the illegal fireworks that were taking place?
Sure. What I can tell you is I don't have the data as to how Long Grove compares to other communities on that. I can assure you that countywide, every village was impacted by a large amount of fireworks during the 4th of July celebration. But I will look at that data and see how it compared to other villages. if you'd like. Thank you.
I heard everybody got fogged out, including us. We couldn't see anything. Not the ones we were at. They shut them down. That's interesting. Yeah, it could be.
All right, interesting question, and I guess we'll get data behind it, so thank you. All right, welcome. This is what you have to look forward to. So welcome to the Village of Long Grove. All right, on the consent agenda, we have approval of the payment of the bills or the pay warrant, minutes from the June 23rd meeting, and that's it, right? Those are the only two items on the agenda. Any questions or somebody want to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
They moved by trustee O'Connor. Seconded by
Second.
trustee Gayton. Roll call, please.
Trustee O'Connor,
Aye.
trustee Gayton,
Aye.
trustee Borowski,
Aye.
trustee Jamil,
Aye.
trustee Chanucci.
Aye. Motion carried. All right. There is an item on the agenda. It's discussion about a major PUD amendment extension. And I guess Village Manager Sparkman is going to set this one up.
Yeah.
Discussion on.
Yeah, so this is for 4542 Kimberly Court. You might recall a few years ago, actually August of 2024, the village board adopted an ordinance approving a preliminary PUD major amendment for lot 16, which is 4542 Kimberly Court within White Oaks subdivision. The preliminary PUD primarily approved drainage modifications and other site improvements necessary to create a buildable area for the construction of a single family residence. At the time of the request, the property owner represented that the lot would be developed as a home for their family. As part of the approval, the board required the applicant to obtain final PUD approval within 2 years of the preliminary PUD approval. So we're approaching that 2-year deadline, and the applicant has requested a 2-year extension of that. There are some drainage concerns. I don't know if Village Engineer Perry wants to chime in on the timing of those before we open it up to board discussion. No? Either now or later, that's fine. Okay. And yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you briefly speak up to the podium though. Yep. Name and who you represent.
Yes. I'm David Meek, partner with the law firm of Meltzer Pertil Stell, and I represent the property owner, Jason Zilberbrand, and the LLC through which they own this property. My client is here simply to ask for additional time to bring forward a final PUD plan, which requires final engineering. The reason my client didn't end up completing the final engineering plans is he ultimately elected to not build his house on this property. And the only way to bring forward final PUD plans and final engineering was to have an actual house designed for the lot. The whole genesis of this was to modify what had been a rather restrictive, large drainage easement on the property and shrink its scope a little bit and design swale engineering within that. The property was originally platted in the 1980s. It has been one of the last undeveloped lots. It's a very heavily wooded lot, and the conditions on the site have changed since it was originally platted. There's more wetland area than there was before, and to try to create enough tableland or enough buildable lot area for the house and for house commensurate with White Oaks Estate, my client felt that it was necessary to try to increase the building envelope because it was so constrained by rather large drainage easement on the east side of the property. So he presented the preliminary plat. You made the legislative determination that that was appropriate. You passed an ordinance because it was a major amendment to a PUD, it is typical under most village codes to have some sort of time limit by which you come in for final plat approval. He did work on this during the 2-year period. There was a lot of engineering and permitting matters that needed to be brought forward. However, it did require a final house plan, and he and his family elected to acquire a different house in White Oaks Estate subdivision rather than build here. So what he's trying to do here is preserve the value of the entitlement for a new lot owner, somebody else who would come in and build a home on that lot commensurate with the White Oaks Estates, subject to all your purview, all your review, all your final plat approval, and in terms of the ultimate house, subject to the HOA's architectural controls. So the only thing this is doing is changing or providing for some additional time for a new homeowner, and the property is currently for sale, to come in and bring this forward as a final plat, and then you'll have a house on one of the last lots in the subdivision, and you'll have a house in the town. So it's just an extension of time. There's no other request to modify what was previously permitted or what was previously approved that would allow him to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment on that. Okay, I'll turn it back to the board for discussion on this. I think, I don't even, how long ago did we approve this, right? This was
2 years, August of 2024.
okay, so 2 years ago we approved it. And, you know, in that subdivision, drainage has been a challenge, you know, from some of the feedback we're getting. You know, I don't know where everyone stands on this. You know, we're not making a decision tonight, but you know, the question is, do you want to extend it or not? If you don't extend it, I would think that some of the pre-work that's already been done in the event that a house wants to get built there would not all go to waste. It's just that they would have to go back through the approval process all over again. So I don't know what people's thoughts are on that. Supportive of it, not supportive of it, but I know it's a tricky situation, and you know, drainage in White Oak Estates has been interesting lately. So.
Well, I remember this resident, and I remember the plans. We went over them, you and I, extensively. It's a tricky property to build a house on because of wetlands. And yes, in White Oak Estates, in general, it's mushy, can be. And I remember it was a really large house with a swimming pool. And I think on the east side of it, there was a lot of concrete and or bricks or shoring up, so to speak, that we were requiring. My thinking on it is just because it's a difficult, the buildable land is difficult, I think, on this parcel, that a new applicant should start from the beginning because things change, water levels change, climate changes. I would not be in favor of extending it.
Thanks for your thoughts. Other thoughts? Anyone want to pipe in?
I have a quick question. Is the buyer soon to purchase this lot in a couple of months, or are you seeing like maybe a year or two? How soon?
Well, the reason we're asking for 2 years because we don't have a buyer today. It was put on the market this spring, and I think it's reasonable to allow sufficient time. It could be brought forward more quickly for somebody to take over where this was, but preserve the entitlement. Respectfully, with the comment on desiring to not approve this and require somebody to go through, my client spent considerable money even since the preliminary plan approval, $75,000, and has some reliance interest on an entitlement that you approved that made a policy decision that it was an appropriate request to modify the easement area so that proper engineering can be designed. Any engineering that does go forward, even to the extent that conditions may or may not have changed in the intervening 2 years, would still go through engineering review, still go through the permitting process at the Lake County SMC, the wetlands determination at the federal level, and go through final engineering review with your engineer. So respectfully, that was a condition that existed. The potential for change conditions existed during the 2 years my client had this entitlement. He's asking just for additional time. He's not asking to skip a review process. He's not asking for an ability to do anything that would necessitate. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it would be extremely unfair, in my view and my client's view, to require somebody else to essentially have to come back with a potential redesign where there's no basis for the redesign. It was preliminarily planned. The PUD amendment was just to reduce an area and create an area within which to create a drainage swale that would work in this site and to create modifications to the wetlands. Anybody who takes this project over will have to address, according to regulations, how to do that within the area that you've preliminarily approved. So I'm just asking for additional time to let somebody complete that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
He said 2 years.
Other questions? I mean, thank you for that too.
How legally is the limitation?
Both our zoning code as well as the ordinance that granted relief set the 2-year limit. So that was the condition that was to be satisfied. This is a request to modify that. It's within the board's discretion to do so, but it has no obligation to do so.
If the applicant surpasses PUD limitation, then can they come back for any amendments to that, or do they have to start all over?
If they come back with something which is different than what was in the preliminary, if it was not substantially in conformity with the preliminary PUD, then it would require an amendment to that preliminary PUD as well as the final PUD. That's how our ordinance is established. I think that, and I'm certainly appreciative of the points that Mr. Meek has made. I would note that the village engineer has pointed out that the underlying wetland report has expired. And as a result of that, that's going to have to be started all over again. So I think that it's not a matter of anything being wasted. It's a matter of everything having to be restarted anyway. And the fact that it was approved once before would probably be good grounds to approve it once again, assuming that there haven't been any fundamental changes in the underlying factual bases for granting the relief in the first instance. But the thing we don't know is whether there have been any underlying changes. And I think that that's one of the concerns that the village engineer, and Jeff, if I'm putting words in your mouth that you opposed, let me know. But that was how I understood your review of this came out.
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate that just a little bit, the wetland study per the Lake County Watershed Development Ordinance, those are valid for 3 years. Mr. Zilberbrand and his team commenced that effort with delineating wetlands in 2022, and then got some of the first initial steps done with the Lake County SMC in 2022. Both have it now expired. So when we do get the next application or next round of information, technical data, we're going to be looking for an updated wetland study that is in effect and complies with the ordinance. And like the discussion has been, things have changed, drainage, passage of time, things of that nature. Even the wetlands have changed since the subdivision was built. So that's why those types of things are written into the ordinance. So there is going to be a little bit of
restarting the work. Typically, it's easier the second time around, but it will be required when we do get updated information on this one.
If I could though, wouldn't that be all done in connection with the development of final engineering plans? So in other words, there's no credible basis today to think that the preliminary PUD plat approval, which was the modification of an area for a drainage, just a modification within which to work out the details, that those wouldn't be necessarily affected by the need to do a updated wetlands report. And so this would all be done in connection with any revised engineering that would be brought forward in connection with a final engineering plan, which presumably, without evidence to the contrary in front of us today, could comport with the preliminary plan. And if it didn't, then the applicant may need to modify that preliminary plan. But I don't see a good reason to basically cast aside what was previously done, and where all that needs to be done is to move forward with the preliminary engineering. And so that's why we're asking for just an extension of time to do that. It seems to me to be an incredible waste of resources, and it also seems to be a sort of contrary to the legislative policy that you had already decided with respect to the buildability of this lot to not grant a reasonable request for an extension of time in which to complete what anybody who was going to develop this would need to do. I don't think there's really any credible, reasonable justification that I've heard to reject that.
Yeah, and so thank you for those comments. I'm gonna let the board discuss it further. And if there's anything that village engineer Perry or village manager Sparkman want to respond, please do, but I'd like to hear from the board. Does trustee Tanucci have anything he wants to say? Right.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So based on what I've heard from both Vic and Jeff, I feel that it's not appropriate to extend this another 2 years. That's my position.
Okay.
It seems like a lot of work will need to be redone regardless. And in fact, this PJD, preliminary jurisdictional determination, has expired. That will need to be redone. And the information gleaned from that will then go into determining what's appropriate or not appropriate for that site. So you can't just extend what's already there, because something new is going to come in and you'll have to base it on whatever that new thing is.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. Trustee Borowski, any comments? Not yet. That's a comment. Trustee Gayton.
I just had a question for Jeff as well. As what's the risk if we do approve the extension?
I suppose the only risk would be, if they go through the updated wetland study, things change and that has some sort of a domino effect and the easement line needs to shift a little bit one way or the other. Does that trigger, coming back through the entire process?
Okay, so you have to, but we're telling that we would think that we want to make them go through the process regardless, right?
But yeah, that's a risk to the applicant.
Yeah.
Are you in part of White Oaks Estates? Yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to keep it to the board though right now. So I didn't get
So I agree with trustee Tenochi here because the thing is, there is no buyer as of now. If the buyer is available within a short period of time, this PUD is going to be quick and easy process for resubmission, and then at that time, board can consider that. But at this time, I'm not in favor of extension.
Okay. Trustee Gayton, where was your head at?
I'm leaning that way as well.
Okay. Trustee Borowski? No comment yet?
Not really a comment. On one hand, I think this request sounds kind of reasonable to me. It seems like there's an awful lot of unknowns about whether the wetland has done something differently. I don't know enough about how quickly a wetland changes and what the impact will or won't be on the property. So kind of seems to me this is a lot of what ifs set up in a little form of some bureaucracy, if you will. So that's why I'm a little bit kind of on the fence on this. To me, if I went through that process and I just didn't build my house fast enough, I don't know if asking for an extension would be unreasonable. So I don't know.
So you don't know is your answer. So I think the challenge that we have is that that lot was acquired. It's an odd lot, right? So and the buyer of the lot thought that they wanted to build their home there and came to us with a request to change where the wetland is, to route the water around it so they could build a house. And then they, chose to build a house somewhere else in the subdivision. So, that's great. The challenge is though, is that, I don't think we have the support of the HOA for this. If I read correctly, the HOA is not supportive of the extension. Is that true? Do you know? Yeah, you get it. I'm going to ask you. Yeah, Christina, please do. Yeah, I'm going to put you up there because I want to add this to the record, I guess, too, because as I understand that there's not a lot of support by the HOA just because all the unknowns, right?
Well, yes and no. So we unfortunately have not had a chance to gather and speak about it. We're down a president. He's moving. Other board member is traveling. So when we heard the notice. So again, it's me. I was here 2 years ago, right? And there was never a concern about it being done. It was, let's figure it out because of some of the drainage issues that we have. And yes, Mr. Zilberbrand is a neighbor and he lived there for 10 years and he he actually bought the house that he was renting. So he's in our subdivision. It's again, the unknown for us, which is fine. Where the house is going to lay, because there was so much, I guess, concern back then that it wasn't about the particulars. It was the engineering was going to happen. So, and we kind of put that on the back burner and then now we're at 2 years. So yes, we do have a concern with it, who it's going to, I guess, where that house is going to be. The drainage is a little more concerning than it was 2 years ago. I have to be honest with you. So that's where our concern lies. How much of an extension you would have to give, if you give any, I'm not sure. We didn't have a chance to talk about it. So I'm sorry that, my answer is like that, but yeah.
That's a great answer. It's an honest answer. Thank you. Thanks for doing that to represent the HOA. Well, so I think, and then the other thing that we have is we generally have 2-year policy on these things too. When you fill out a building application, you have 2 years to build your house. It's following those rules, right? And if you don't, then you start over or you ask for an extension at the time you're ready to do it. Here, we don't know when or if the property will be sold. They have to find a buyer, et cetera. So I'm going to ask Vic a question about that too. Just looking at our village codes, granting a variance here, how does that impact other decisions we make? There's suggested, can it be a short-term extension? How would you do that?
Yeah, we have granted extensions in the past, so that's not outside of the norm. And, I think this is in some respects almost a 6 of one, half dozen of the other. If the wetland study, when it's redone, which will have to be, ends up being substantially identical to the first one, then it would seem to me that there'd be no real basis on which we wouldn't approve it again. The whole point of this was that this was a lot that had a number of material encumbrances and, we're trying to unwind some of that complication. On the other hand, if there are substantial differences, then whatever approvals we gave the first time are going to have to start all over again, in part because it won't be substantially in compliance with the preliminary PUD. So, you know, I mean, there is a coin flip here. I think that recognizing that the wetland study is going to have to be redone, in some respects, can be viewed as, you know, the village will get another look at it, or it can be reviewed from the perspective of, we don't know the starting point, so why don't we start all over again? And I don't know that I have a good answer. If I were a voting person right now, I'd probably be voting along the lines of where Chris is right now.
Sit down, let us talk about
It can go both ways.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think from a policy perspective, the extension is a problematic thing. We've done that in other circumstances. I think that the primary difference is that there are different sets of circumstances and were present when this was first presented to the village. And, you know, that may be a reason for reconsideration.
Let me ask another question, Vic, too. So a lot of work was done that, you know, to get it approved. So the concern is drainage. So can an approval to extend it for a year subject to the drainage study not changing, or a new drainage study? Or is that really to make no difference? Does it really?
Well, the one thing I suppose if the board wants to extend it, I would have the extension based on an ordinance that actually expressly requires a change or an update of the drainage study. And that's because the original drainage study is one of the exhibits from the original ordinance. And it's now kind of dead letter.
But could it be extended for, let's just say, a year?
A year. And
then,
I mean,
subject to.
The board has discretion to extend it for, I would say we don't really do it for more than 2 years because that's the limit in our code. But there's no prohibition from successive extensions. So.
But if we extended it subject to a new drainage study, and the drainage study, assuming it comes back, it doesn't change, then obviously it goes through, right? Most of the work that they did would still be intact.
I would think that, you know, whatever happens, they're going to have to do a new drainage study. If that new drainage study ends up being substantially the same, then there would be little cause not to just approve everything in the manner it was done before, subject to whatever tweaks an ultimate developer or builder wants to make.
So what could we approve at a next meeting then that would give some comfort to the HOA and the property owner that all their work is for naught, and then for the HOA that the drainage issue is addressed, right?
I would say that it would be an ordinance to extend it for a year, 2 years, whatever that decision is. And there would be an express requirement that, notwithstanding anything, they will have to get a new drainage study, or it's actually a wetland study, to confirm that the underlying wetland analysis hasn't changed.
Okay. Would the board be agreeable to something like that?
So what would have to be done by the end of that 1 year period, or whatever the period is?
I would say if they haven't done one, then there wouldn't be much cause for them to come back a year later. And if they want to move forward with final, they're going to have that study, yes.
Right, so we know they have to do the study. It'll have to be within that year. Is there anything else they would need to complete within that year?
Well, I would, you know, again, there could be a cascading number of events that would have to happen if there are some changes in that study. But I think that the fundamental question is whether the wetland study can be essentially replicated and approved in that fashion. If it can, then we're in pretty much the same position we are today.
Would a new home need to be built and completed within that 1 year?
I would say that they need to have the plans approved for it. And then that would have been the thing to trigger the final PUD.
I know you have a question. I want to hear from the board though. So trustee Browski, does that change your position at all?
Well, my position is, so how long does a wetland study take, Jeff?
To complete the wetland study?
Yeah.
And get that done in a matter of weeks.
Okay, so weeks. Thank you.
How expensive is a wetland study, do you know?
For this property, I would put it on the magnitude of $2,500, $3,000.
Okay. And how long do they last for?
They're valid once the wetland delineation is valid for 3 years. And then they can get the wetland study done, have that done, and then submit to the county for anywhere within that 3 years to get the preliminary jurisdictional determination. And then that's good for 3 years. So in a sense, you can stack those two things on top of each other and have a wetland study that's good for 6 years. If you follow that.
Okay. Now I'm even more confused, but I'm just gonna, if there was a compromise here that, and I know you have a comment, but I want to get to some conclusion here. With the board, would anyone be agreeable to extend it where the assurances are that there's going to be a, wetland study that proves that the drainage situation hasn't changed, right? And that would be a requirement as a part of our approval. Would people be okay with that? Because that's really the issue, the main issue that we're talking about. Correct or not correct? That's what it is.
They've had, why do we put 2 years on these things? And if we're gonna not, there had to be a reason. It's not arbitrary, is it? He's had 2 years to get something done.
Yeah.
It's been built. The next buyer's not gonna build the same kind of house that he would build. That's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I think the practical thing, and I don't know if Mr. Meek was going to say something along these lines, but I think the practical thing is that for purposes of selling this property, having some certainty as to where the easements are going to be, so someone can look at it and say, oh, I could build a house here, has a real advantage, both for the potential purchaser as well as for the seller. So, I think that if there can be that kind of clarity, there's an advantage. And I think that there's no harm to the village and probably a benefit to the village if we could make good use of that property than just having it, lie vacant. So I think there is one reason to allow this to move forward for the additional year or two. But we have the 2-year limit because we don't want things to get stale. I mean, that's always a concern. And this one, I think, has some unique features because it involved realigning a number of easements that were originally planted, what was it, Jeff, 25 years ago? Something like that. I mean,
A little more than that.
yeah, so I mean, we're dealing with some material changes to rather longstanding documents. And I think that if somebody really wants to develop this property and build a house on it, looking at the current plat, having a bunch of easements with no assurance that there's a relocation of those easements or abrogation of some of those easements becomes a more challenging thing for a potential buyer. So I mean, as I said, this is kind of a 6 of one, half dozen of the other, because if the wetland study comes out the same and somebody came back, if we didn't extend it, I think we'd be hard pressed, given what the board thought about it before, to say no. On the other hand, granting the extension makes perfect sense. And if they end up having a wetland study that says something contrary to the first one, then they can't get substantial compliance and they can't get final PUD. I mean, that's a question that is beyond our reach right now.
I mean, with the way you're setting it up now, and I'll allow you one more comment, but I just want to get, does this sound like a workable solution? I know the HOA hasn't spoke yet, and it's, we're just kind of coming up with formulating a way to put this on the agenda for an approval, but would something like that make it work? And it's a compromise for everyone, because the big issue is drainage and so that wetland study is key to it. Got it. So I don't know, does that work?
I think it makes a fair compromise, given your 1 year, if he does the wetland study. Because what Vic said is chances are, if it stays the same, which there's no reason we can't think that it would, that we'd approve it anyway. So it makes sense that if we gave the 1 year conditional on the wetland study, and then once that's there, if we had to do an additional year, once we got that study and everything was the same, makes sense to move forward that way. That way it's compromised in the sense that these people have invested money, and that seems fair.
Trustee Tanuccia, does that change your position?
I have to think about it.
Okay,
Not sure.
not sure. Trustee Jamil?
With the compromise, but here the few concerns are, if it still didn't happen in year, then again, this would become norm for other people to do the same thing. We are here potentially, we have no buyer available, and wetland studies, we keep on repeating to extend the PUD. Doesn't make sense to me, but I'm open for it.
Okay, thank you. I'll let you have another comment there. Sorry. I wanted to have a dialogue with the board, really. Public comment is for public comment. So, but I understand the sensitivity of this. So
I appreciate that. On the last comment, well, for the overall, you have the mechanisms already in the whole final plat review process. Everything you're talking about, the renewed wetlands jurisdictional determination would be required. So that's already a part of it. I think the 1 year versus 2 years, I understand you're positioning this as a compromise. I think it is somewhat prejudicial to a new property owner to have to come in and do the entire house design and all the final engineering within the 1 year from today, where we don't even have a buyer. So I'd ask you to reconsider that this be a 2 year extension. I don't think that it becomes precedent in other contexts, because again, your ordinances say 2 years. Anybody coming for a request would have to justify the request. And I think we've made a reasonable justification for it. And we're not looking to skirt or anything or freeze any regulations. We understand there's a regulatory system that we have to go through. And so we'd ask for the 2 year extension as we've requested it. Thank you.
thank you. All right. So so help me out, board. I know that there's some agreement about extending it with the requirement of the survey. Now, Vic, is it true that the final PUD would cover that or no?
Well,
It's not final PUD.
the final PUD process does require a determination of substantial conformity with the preliminary PUD.
Right.
So all of that is going to have to happen. And as I said, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other, because it's got to happen. If they don't have that wetland study that aligns with the original one, then they're not going to get the final PUD. If they do have it, then there'd be very little reason for us not to re-grant it. And they could come back with a preliminary and final. So I mean, from a timing perspective, it theoretically could be the same. I think that perhaps the biggest issue is just the one of what might a prospective buyer want. And I think a prospective buyer is going to have a lot of hesitancy if they see the existing plat without any kind of relief already in place with these easements cross-cutting the lot. I think that was one of the things that the Plan Commission and the board talked about last time of some of the complications here. And if there is a desire to make it easier for this property to move forward with development, then I think that we can grant the extension. We have the protections in place, because if the wetland study changes, and wetlands are dynamic, I mean, they can change. If it changes, then all bets are off on what they had approved in the first place.
So does that need to be written
I would suggest that if we're going to extend it, we make that point expressly.
Expressly in it, okay. And then it's the question of 1 or 2 years. I don't know that we have to decide that tonight.
No, we can draft the ordinance and we'll put it as a bracket of 1 or 2 years and you guys can have the chance to mull it over, until the next meeting.
Does that work for everyone? Right, anybody else? All right, I think that's a nodding of heads. That's a yes, so hopefully that helps give us a path forward. So we'll see where it goes. Thank you. Yeah, if we're ready.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there was never just a discussion. There was never a decision being made tonight. We were just trying to gain consensus, find a path forward. Perhaps we did, and it's a win-win for everyone, I hope. So, and then you'll be hopefully able to talk to your HOA too, or, I mean, you're a member of it, but get some feedback from them too. So thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone. All right. So this gets interesting in a hurry. So the next one is discussion approval road safety pilot program. So I'm going to start out by saying, yeah, I'm the one behind this. Because when I first ran for office, it was felt that we didn't have enough money to pave our public roads. In fact, at the time, the then board was going to levy a property tax. And the main purpose of it was to pave our roads. Turns out that we didn't have a problem. In fact, when we complete a road paving program, which I think we're just about done, we'll repave 94% of our public roads in a 12-year period of time without levying a property tax. So when I ran for office, whether right or wrong, one of the things that I said was, and a few other trustees at the time maybe remember differently, but I clearly remember what I said, was that if we ever were in a position where we had extra money, boy, wouldn't it be great to put a program together that would allow HOAs to have access to funding to pave their roads, because there's about a third of the subdivisions that get their roads paved for free, the others don't. So I know there was a lot of interest from the HOAs at that time. I'll continue here for a moment. I know at the last meeting, we put it on as a discussion item, not a decision. I know that two of the trustees were definite. Well, one was didn't make a decision. One was a definite no. You know who you are. And then there were 3 yeses. So potentially we could move it forward. Tonight there was a few statements made, and then I'm going to ask or start this out by asking our village attorney. One of the comments that was made tonight was, hey, can we, using it for engineering, getting a survey, would that be a better way to go? Because that's one of the more challenging things. Another comment that was made was that that this money should be used for something else. We just paved our roads. And is it legal? Can we do it legally? So I know that a lot of care went into the way this was put together by our village attorney, but I would like him to answer could somebody come here and apply for just engineering costs? I was an HOA president, so part of the reason I feel so passionate about this is I had to learn how to pave my roads. And at the time, the village staff was there. They didn't offer any help. When I became a trustee, we started some workshops for the HOAs. We actually do offer some assistance from our village engineer free of charge, not to the level that you need to get a bid out, right? But there is some expertise, and we did that. And I thought this was the natural extension of that. It's just something I've always felt that we should do when we're in a position to do it. So I'll ask maybe Vic to answer my questions, address the legal issue, and then the public funds for private roads, which, is interesting because they're semi-public roads, depending on the situation. And then could the way the plan is designed, could it just be used for engineering? I don't know.
Thank you. With respect to I'll start with the last question first. The Constitution does say public funds have to be used for public purposes. And while these are private roads, as set forth in the resolution, there are a number of public purposes that are associated with these private roads, including ensuring safe passage of public service vehicles. That is a public purpose. I mean, we don't want to have our police vehicles or fire vehicles, and they're not ours, but I mean, they're the ones that serve us. The refuse collections get damaged on these roads and thereby impair the ability for service to happen. We don't want to have delays in delivery of service because of the condition of roads. So there's an advantage to the public to have these roads in good condition. There is a further advantage to the village to just make sure people are safe. Whether it's public or private roads, we want people safe. That's a public purpose. And further, having Long Grove as a community that has quality amenities, again, whether public or private, enhances the opportunity for economic development in the village. And so all of those are public purposes. These are determinations that if you adopt this resolution, you all will be making. And under the Illinois Constitution and case law, as a legislative body, you have the predominant authority to determine what is in the public, what is a public purpose and what is in the public interest. And so I'm not troubled by the utilization of these funds in the manner we're proposing in this program if the board decides to pass it. With respect to what use the monies are for, should it be for engineering, should it be for the construction, that's really a different choice. I would say, given the analysis I just offered, however, regarding what is a public purpose, if we're offering engineering services, that's a couple steps away still from getting the roads done, which makes the connection with the public purpose a little more attenuated. I certainly agree with what Aaron said. You know, you got to start somewhere, and if you don't have the place to get some traction at the outset, that's troublesome. And I think what you were saying, President Jacob, about the village trying to offer some preliminary engineering guidance has been the practice and remains a good practice for getting that traction. But I think that if we were to transform this program to a program of providing engineering services for what might become a private road improvement, we're attenuating the benefit that would actually serve the public purpose. So I have a little hesitancy about that. Now, there was a second question, and I can't remember what it is. So I'm going to either have to be refreshed or I'm going to pretend like it didn't exist.
No, I think you answered both of them. I think you did.
Okay.
Oh, that fan is loud, by the way, just for the record. Turns on. We got to figure that one out. I think you answered the question. So, you know, at the last meeting, we also talked about 250 was in the budget for this. That's the cap. We talked about an application window to announce it to the HOAs. I got it. It's a pilot. And, you know, it is public money, but I know that there was enough support to move it forward. But I think you know, we're bringing it back again, and now we've got some new comments. I would believe that there would be, if we had HOAs come in here, HOA presidents come in here, we might get another side of it as well from other HOAs supporting it. So I think these are great thoughts that were provided. But I behind this for many years. We talked about it in the workshop. We vetted it out. This is our third time discussing it, plus the workshop, fourth time. So fourth time discussing it. So I know that there might be a trustee that wants to make a motion to approve and move it forward and vote on it. I don't know, but that's where we kind of ended at the last meeting. So I'll stop there and let the trustees talk. If you could please hold that comment till the end, I would really like to have the board discuss this. So. I won't. I'll look this way. Anyone
No way.
looking this way? I'm sorry. I'm making you feel bad.
I'm a little more awake on this one. That's fine. Just a question. So just to clarify, road maintenance, what does that actually mean? I just want to maybe delineate between road replacement, road recapping, scraping, recapping, or does that also include seal coating? Does it include patch filling? Does it include pothole filling? What delineates road maintenance? And what happens if 48 HOAs come in and all want $25,000 to do seal coating or patching or something like that instead of a full replacement? Do we envision this as being okay to pass out, I don't know, 10 grand to 50 HOAs every year, or actually it'd be 5 grand to 50 HOAs every year? Is that?
I think that, again, good question. I mean, one of the things about a pilot program is we're trying to find our way in sorts of ways. When this was discussed, this was discussed at a non-board level first. And one of the things that was considered is, should this only be for new roads or should it be for maintenance? And we thought, okay, well, we're introducing it at a point in time, and because the roads only get redone every 15, 20 years, it's going to foreclose a lot of communities within town to even apply unless we make it available for maintenance programs as well. Now, presumably the maintenance programs will cost less, and so they'll be asking for less. And I guess to answer your question, we don't know, but we want to get quality projects that will help the community. And we may find that this assessment committee that is called for in the program is going to find themselves with, headaches beyond belief.
Well, okay, I'm sorry, Vic, go ahead.
So I mean, we don't know, but we wanted to make sure that the program had the ability to help a community build a new road or do some maintenance that will extend the road's life for 5 years. Both of those have value. And so that was why it's stated in the way it is. Is it the best way? I don't know.
So I've got a couple of questions and maybe mixed in comments. So does the evaluation committee open the bids in public, or is that behind closed doors evaluation of the grants applications?
I think it's a little different than what we have when we open bids. This would be something that we would get requests for projects from however many private road communities. And it would be, those would all be vetted presumably at the staff level first, so that there could then be a meaningful discussion by the assessment committee. And they would then make a recommendation based on the variety of criteria that are set forth in the program documents to the board. And the board then can make the final call. I don't know what we're going to see out of this. And that's why, I guess it's an evaluation committee. Sorry, I've misnomered the nomer. But I would say that that's going to be the process through which most of the heavy lifting is going to be done. And they will come to the board and say, we have $250,000. We have requests for, if we only have requests for $20,000, that makes it a lot easier. If we have requests for $2 million, then that's going to be a much more hard-nosed kind of evaluation that committee is going to have to go through.
So again, shouldn't the committee be doing that in under the sunshine of our our Edison bulbs here? I mean, shouldn't we open those bids or set the date and say, okay, all you 48 HOAs, submit your bids by October 4th, and they all come in and we get, and the committee opening those bids in public or those requests in public, I think sheds a lot of light on which HOAs are involved, what the requests actually look like. Because even though I trust my evaluation committee, on the other hand, what's stopping us from doing that in the public forum? Why isn't that a public meeting saying, hey, we got 48, we'll come back in 2 weeks and Pareto them out and at least give some reasons as to why the 7 were rejected, where, you know, if I'm a rejected HOA, I'm not real happy and I want to know why I was rejected, you know, that kind of thing. And I want to know I want to have the opportunity to maybe battle it out a little bit more than just go, oh, sorry, Chris is screwed again, you know?
I think it's fair to say that the program itself doesn't really set any real parameters for how the committee is going to do its work. And I think one of the challenges, again, is not knowing what we're going to get. I think how many applications we get, what the time frame is going to be, all of that will factor into it. But all of these documents would be public documents, the submittals at least. And I think that the
public being FOIA-able or
Yeah.
public being published and distributed? I mean, because there's a difference between you get the FOIA line.
I don't know. I mean, I suppose we could put them all on the website. I don't know, the level of interest, but that is an indifferent thing. I mean, if we're going to put them on the website, we're going to have to do some appropriate redacting because of certain information that shouldn't be disclosed.
Okay, that's fair.
But they would be FOIA-able. I think that the evaluation process is intended, and there's a form that's included here. There's supposed to be an evaluation of each application. So it presumably is going to say, yeah, this is an interesting project, but it costs too much for, it's going to be fixing a 15-foot segment of road that's collapsed, but otherwise isn't doing anything for anybody. Well, they may say that's too much money for the benefit. And that would be an evaluation from this committee.
What if 48 HOAs submit the request for their $5,000 allocation? And we've got a clause in this document that says you can only get that for 2 consecutive years. And then after that, you can't reapply for 10 years. What happens then?
We could always revisit the program and change it if we feel like that's necessary. It also may help various HOAs decide, when do we want to strike? I mean, do we want to strike for a $5,000 project, or do we want to develop a more comprehensive maintenance program and seek $75,000 for it? I think the difficulty here is that we don't have, and I can't remember if Aaron said this or someone else said this, that we don't have like a stock kind of HOA. We have HOAs of all shapes, sizes, character. Some of them aren't even really HOAs, but they might go by that. And all of those are complications that are going to have to be put into the mix of this. And so we hadn't a good model to routinize this in a way that could ensure fairness. And so what we've tried to do is to cast a broad net so that people can choose to apply and then go through the evaluation process.
Why can't we dry run it and just go to the HOA presidents and say, hey, here's what we're thinking, 250,000 is the number. I don't know still what shovel ready means. I think that's still another committee interpretive, subjective word. But what if we go to the HOAs and say, okay, here's what we're thinking. What have you got? What if we float it out there and say, what have you got? And see what that data looks like. Because right now we don't know. We don't know why 5 houses on a 3-mile road should be getting X number of dollars when 50 houses in a 7-mile road should be getting that money either. I'm still troubled by allocating a bulk chunk of money to X number of homes. And I just don't know how fair that is. In my mind, it should always come back to homes per road mile or some metric like that, that says, okay, we'll give you money, but if you got 50 homes versus 10 homes, you know, they're totally different scenarios in terms of road miles that they're working on. So how is any of that fair to anybody? It should be,
That's how we initially started this out.
right.
Yeah, the notion of doling out money per home, I think that raises the issue that the gentleman had raised earlier about, where's the public purpose for that? We're just giving money away. The program that is before you would be one that actually warrants a determination that there is a public purpose and benefit arising from the grants that are provided. And is that harder? Yeah, it's harder. Sorry to say that, but that's the way that we can better ensure that we are doing this for a public purpose rather than simply returning money to individuals.
All right, a couple more things. Section 6 said something like, if awarded, the program, you know, the maintenance program will comply with all village codes and standards. I thought we had sort of softened that language so that we're not requiring, first of all, I don't know what all village standards are, but, you know, it just seems pretty onerous to a small or any HOA to try to figure out what those standards are. And then make sure that the road maintenance program complies with it going forward, whatever that means.
I thought there was a qualifier here.
I'm sorry? Well, that's
No, it would not be prevailing wage in part because this is a reimbursement. It is not for the project itself. And it's to recognize the public benefit that results from the project that a private entity undertook. What we put in this is that
That's it right there, right? Clearly the degree of conformity with the villages.
right, we did soften the language, and keep in mind, some of our standards are stated with respect to public roads and not to private roads. So they're not really applicable, but we're hoping that they approach the appropriate standards. I mean, maybe it's not appropriate for a private road to have all of the bells and whistles of a public road, but maybe it should have 80% of them. Maybe there are some of them. And again, that's outside of my purview, and it's really something that I think was intended to be evaluated in the context of the particular project.
And my last kind of comment is pertaining to the agreement that gets signed. Are we sort of forcing our HOAs to lawyer up to review the VIC document, or is that document overly complex and will require an HOA to go hire their own attorney and then play the VIC game for a while before they sign?
I think that the expectation was that we wanted to have, first of all, we need to have an agreement to ensure that not only are we doing our part, but they're doing their part. So I think that's, again, part of the assurance that the public purpose is going to be served. The agreement is, quite frankly, I think a pretty straightforward one. We've used this in grant programs, or some version of this in grant programs, probably in half a dozen other villages, where there are facade programs, there are minor economic development programs, there's seed money programs, there are historic preservation programs. All of those are instances where there might be public monies used to encourage certain private activity. And we have an agreement that memorializes it. I don't think that there's too much in here that, there's a lot that's just boilerplate that would typically be in any kind of such agreement.
Thank you very much.
Stay down on this side of the table. Trustee Tanucci, any comments?
Yeah. So I had previously said I would support this program, and therefore I feel a moral obligation to do what I said I was going to do. I have to say, I don't love the program. I've never loved it. Can't get rid of the thought that we could do things with this money that would benefit the village overall, like the pathways that we're going to be discussing next, as opposed to giving a relatively small sum of money to each HOA to do something that they were likely to do anyway. So we're not getting anything new by doing this. Whereas if we put that money toward, again, perhaps pathways, we're getting something new that is useful to many, many residents, not a small number of them. So that's another moral obligation. I have a moral obligation as a trustee to do what's best for the village as a whole. These are conflicting moral obligations. So I have to figure out which moral obligation I'm going to honor and which one I'm not. But as I say, I've never loved the program, and I think we could do better things with that money that would serve more people. But at this point, I don't know where I'm going to fall.
All right, thanks for those comments. I'll move down this way. Who wants to go? Good.
Probably don't want to hear what I have to say.
I already know what you're going to say, but go ahead.
I'm happy that two other people thinking the way I'm thinking, I guess. I have given this a lot of thought. And I find that I can't in all conscience support the program as it is proposed. We're basing it on the rationale of safety for police and fire and the residents themselves and whoever's in there. And I would like somebody to point out to me which HOAs have roads that are unsafe. I'm on the roads a lot, not Royal Melbourne as much because I don't live there, but I presume their roads are in pretty good shape. The public purpose doctrine, which is an Illinois law, it's also an Illinois Constitution, Article 8, Section 1. If spending taxpayer revenue benefits private individuals or corporations, the expenditures must provide a clear primary benefit to the general public. I can't match that up with what we have proposed here. I'm not saying you can't amend it. I'm just saying this proposal doesn't seem to meet those requirements. I just think it's a potential quagmire. Who wins, who loses? Do we hand money to an association or an HOA that hasn't maintained their roads and kind of reward them for not doing things over the years? Do we give it to the people that have maintained their roads beautifully? Plus, it's a reimbursement program. They've got to come up with the money and then we're going to reimburse them. So if they come up with the money, why do they need us? That confuses me a little bit. And if we're giving away money, why don't we just send a check to every resident, every homeowner in the village? If we've got enough, 250,000 would give us a quarter of a mile pathway and or a pickleball court at Lemon Hill or money to the park district, as you suggested, something that that all the residents and non-residents could appreciate or use. And then maybe if we sent checks out to people, we'd be on the front page of the Trib or the Daily Herald, and people who want to live here. Well, Gross giving away money. It's Halloween every day, right? My suggestion is the same as yours, somewhat. That I think it would be from the HOA meetings that you have held, Bill, for the HOA presidents. It seems to me that the people who attend those, not everyone who's a president comes, but a lot of them who do say that, gee, I'm the president and I really don't know how I got here because I don't know anything about roads. I need help. And I think that if we took this money or a share of it to put in Gaywald Hamilton's pocketbook via Jeff's slave earnings, that it would be perhaps more helpful to an HOA to sit down with an engineer and you're right, they don't have to pay prevailing wage, so they get a kind of a boost there. But to sit down with an engineer who can tell them, this is what you need to get a viable bid from a contractor. You have preliminary things you have to do, check check the base, blah, 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 blah. We've done this a couple of times in our HOA. You know, maybe just kick a meeting off with the HOA preliminaries on how do you go about doing this? 4 or 5, whatever, bullet points. Do they use Reclamate? Do they not use Reclamate? And anybody, any association who has replaced roads, you know, it's not just the guys come in, they bring the big machines and they roll the asphalt out. They have all kinds of support staff. You know, the guy that checks tickets, the guy that checks, are you spreading it the proper depth on these? Are you scraping it properly? I think they would need schooling on this. And the lead time is usually 6 or 12 months. The people that have done this, if you need a new road now, you're not going to get it till next year. So there's time to do stuff like that. And I know this isn't what you'd really like to do. It might not be a bad alternative, might be a good alternative. And it could perhaps avoid the bickering and the envy perhaps, or, you know, the loser image. It's not a nice phrase, but why did I lose? Why didn't we get the money? You know, and maybe what I brought it down to for me is just a really simple test, which is, does this project produce a measurable public benefit that's likely to exceed its cost? If not, move on. If it creates a measurable public benefit that exceeds the cost, then I'm for it. I don't see that with this at this time.
Thank you for that feedback and thoughts. Trustee Gayton?
Initially, when I heard, I'm for it in the sense that I'm for anything that's going to help Long Grove residents. But as this discussion is carried on from the trustees, I got to agree with too. I think just the fairness of the program is it's fraught with problems right from the get-go. It's just because not all the HOAs are equal. We're going to penalize the ones that actually run themselves, where they build up their reserves and they're running, you know, things the right way, and then we're rewarding people for not, you know, doing things the right way. So I guess that is the challenge of that. I'm all for helping Long Grove residents any way we can, and to Rita's point, maybe there's a better way that we can use the funds. So yeah, at this point, I mean, I want to be for it, but I think in the way it's set up right now, I don't think I can support it.
Yeah, let me, so I think, first off, the thought was we may be able to do this for several years, funding permitting. So there would be people that if they didn't get a bite at the apple this year, they would get a bite next year. Also the ability to make changes based on what we find out. We have that ability too. So we're not locked into it forever. It's got to start somewhere. A lot of work went in by village staff to come up with a way to put this together. And it's not perfect, but I think it also accommodated small and large the way it was written. It wasn't singling a big HOA, which, you know, could have an advantage versus a small. I guess the last thing is that, I think we're going to be voting on or looking at doing engineering study for pathways. There's going to be a considerable amount of money that could be put towards that. This is a relatively small sum of our budget. Our finances are good. You know, we can afford to pilot it and continue it. So that's kind of where, that's what's, leading me to say, hey, let's give us a shot. So I'll let Trustee Jamil say a few words, and then I guess we'll figure out where we're at after that.
So I'm for the support of the HOA, and as you know, I stated my position last meeting. However, listening to all this discussion, I want to propose that instead of every year, let's our village engineers talk to the HOA and to find out in each subdivision what are the grants that could be given under this pilot grant, and then come up with an equitable distribution amongst all the HOAs, and wrap this program maybe in 3-4 years. Put a limitation of this road, private road pilot project grant for 4 years. And because I feel like, even they are listed as the private roads, but still, it's a part of Long Grove that doesn't restrict any of the neighbors to go into any private roads. So it's still being used. So as my proposal is to have some limitation and then discussion of the need where it can be, and then award instead of having the applications from the HOA. And if the HOA approaches us, and then based on the need under this pilot grant, we can allocate certain amount that, based on the engineering study. So that for that proposal, I would be happy to go forward. But in this current shape, because of the concerns raised by the trustee, I'm not in favor.
All right, so we're kind of dead here, I guess, at the moment. I think this, I'm trying to think of a path forward, and there's been a few suggestions here. I'll look for some thoughts. I thought we had an alignment at the last meeting, and it's changed. So I don't know, any where do we go with this? Chris and Vic, are we dead at this point?
Certainly the board has the ability to vote on it, and if it's not passed, it doesn't foreclose bringing it back in some modified format. It might be helpful to get the specific concerns. I mean, I've heard various things, but I will say that, one of the things, and this is echoing what you just said, Bill, is that this is a project that presumably is going to evolve. We're going to learn as we go, and as we learn, we can get it perhaps more well suited to what we think it ought to be. I think that the notion, and I think what Aaron had said is, well, we should take a survey and find out what is going on. I think one of the problems with that is that the survey for today may not be the conditions for 3 months from now, 6 months from now, because roads are going to have to be repaired. Activities are going to have to be done. And so perhaps the best survey is actually to put out the application and see what comes back and then evaluate it. And then that will give us raw data. That will give us some information as to what the program can and should do. We may say none of these things are worthwhile and not approve any of them. We may say, oh my gosh, there are really a lot of good projects that we should be putting our support behind, and that will maybe then evaluate or affect evaluation for the next year's budget allocation. I don't know. And I think one of the challenges here is that, again, we have HOAs and non-HOAs for private roads of all shapes, sizes, kinds, and different timings. And other than, I have 2 kids who are trying to swim right now. And I remember my dad just tossed me in the water. Maybe that's what we need to do, is just toss ourselves in the water and see how it goes. And, if it turns out to be an utter flop, you all have another bite at the apple before dime one is given to anybody. That's the way this is set up. And so, again, we can make whatever tweaks you all want to have. And if you don't think that the tweaks are worthwhile, that's fine too. But I think that the effort has been to try to make a project, or a program that will allow projects to be submitted, evaluated, and ultimately decided upon as to whether or not they are going to help the overall community in some fashion or other. And again, I would say that safety is an important thing, and not all HOAs are always going to be able to or willing to devote the money that they need to. I mean, if they don't have a governing structure that will enable them to put the arm on every single resident, maybe no one's going to contribute and you're going to have an unsafe road. And that's bad for everybody.
That's what we're happening.
Again, Aaron, I think that's part of the challenge here. And maybe that is over half the HOAs. I think that we've.
If we don't know, isn't that a sign that we need to do a little more work? Jeez.
All right, well, so let me do this because
What about that thought?
let's stop it right here because I think unless somebody wants to make an motion to approve, we're going nowhere fast. It's 8:36. I think we have to regroup. We'll have to bring it before the board again because we're going down a whole nother direction and we never seem to follow the same path, and we're going another way. So, we can, have another HOA workshop, whatever, but I don't know that that's going to solve the problem that we have before us tonight. I'm serious about that. So if somebody wants to make a motion to approve, we can see if we can get a vote. If not, I say we just table it and we'll see if we can bring it back later for future discussion. I don't know.
Can I have one quick question with you? In this current format of this thing, putting the amendments of HOA consultation plus a limited time period, like, this special pilot grant is available for this year. Can it be done so that every applications can be taken? And then, as you said, we can experiment. And then after 1 year, you won't have to extend it.
I think part of the reason why the shovel-ready standard was put in there was so we can have an immediate feedback as to, did this do any good? And if everything is a project that they intend to do 3 fiscal years out, we don't get that information. So, I appreciate the fact that there are a lot of warts on this. There's no question about it. I think that the effort has been to try to do something, and with that something, we'll have some information to improve it, junk it, continue it. That's really the approach that we've tried to bring forward to you.
All right, if there's, if no one wants to make a motion tonight on this, I'm going to table this for now. And
May I make a suggestion?
sure.
Could my fellow board members say just hands up or thumbs down? Why is there a way that we have a list of our HOAs? Or do we have a list of our HOAs? If we have a list, is there a way to determine what the presidents, if they have them, or, sometimes it's just, well, I've seen to be the it guy or the it girl, but to find out what kind of HOAs we have and at least be able to categorize them so we know how many, how much, which ones are run like Robert's Rules of Order, or which ones are loosey-goosey and they have no clue what they're going to do. I think it would be meaningful information. Does anybody else see a benefit to that in the meantime to kind of work on this thing and get it a little more objective, a little more
I agree with
framework?
what you say, Rita, and that's why I think data is really important. And we don't have that data. I still don't know exactly how many road miles we've got. Maybe I forgot. I don't know how many homes we've got per road mile. Whether or not the HOA is loosey-goosey, I think isn't necessarily in that purview, though. I think data is important. But any HOA that has living, breathing volunteers is a great HOA in my opinion. Now, whether or not they're successful in meeting all the goals, I don't care, but they're volunteers, they're neighbors, they're people in our community. And even though they're loosey-goosey, they're probably trying the best they can. I'm sure they don't wake up in the morning going, I'm gonna screw the HOA up today, you know? But we don't have data, and I think that's a real issue in my mind because that's who I am. I'm wired by data, and
We do have the data though. So on the road miles, and we can get that to the board, right? Who's got that, Jeff?
Yeah, I've got it. I just don't have it on the top of my head.
and
We have the data.
and you've got homes per HOA per road mile then?
Yeah, we've had that too.
Okay, and then why don't we have like an intern driving up and down the roads, taking some pictures and doing an assessment of the roads to go? Or even meeting with the HOA presidents and then asking them what their plan is or what they need? Or what we just assess they need. I mean, I don't understand why we're like having this discussion after all this discussion. Why don't we have that on the screen going, here's what we've got? I don't understand. I'm sorry. I'm data driven. And if you guys can provide that data, I think it'd be very helpful to me.
Some neighborhoods call themselves an HOA and they're on public roads. And it's just sort of, oh yeah, we're an HOA. And it's like, but that's not the kind of.
We've got some de facto HOAs. All right, so it's 8:42. I think that we've talked about this enough. I'm not sure where we head. There's some data that we can get to the board. There's some other suggestions. We'll come back on this one, but right now I think we need to move on because we have a few more other items we have to get done. And let me just move us along. The next one is discussion approval of pathways plan plus phase one engineering. And if I could ask, who wants to lead that? Or is it trustee O'Connor? Who's going to start off? No? Yes?
Go ahead.
Leader defers to me, so I'll kick this one off. So this is another topic that has been around for a little while, and we've been talking about it for off and on in different meetings, and it kind of started with a kind of a larger discussion at the budget workshop back in December. If you remember back in December, we talked about extending the village pathway system, and we presented the concept of extending, call it the spine of the pathway from Sunset Foods up 83 to Gilmer, over to Diamond Lake, and then up to Indian Creek. I believe Chris passed out a handout to everybody. I kind of put that in graphical form just so that we've got something to look at and refer back to. So tonight, the discussion and the direction we're looking for is for the approval of the phase one engineering, which is the preliminary feasibility engineering, if you will. Just kind of take a step back, the idea and the thought of pursuing this is to set the village up for a potential grant to fund the actually the design, engineering, and the construction of these paths. As we've found out and kind of hit on earlier tonight, pathways are expensive to construct. And if there's a chance to get those partially funded, that is a amenable goal. So the phase one engineering is kind of kicks off the first step that is required to get most grants, most notably like an ITEP grant, Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program. So that's the grant program that we're kind of targeting. That one is kind of tailored to pathways. The village has applied for these before, albeit not this pathway and not successful, but I've seen numerous other communities submit for pathways and get this funding. From a timing standpoint, the ITEP grant call for projects opens up August 1 of this year and closes October 5th. You need not have a phase one study complete to submit an application, although if it is complete, your scoring and chances of getting a grant improved. Likewise, if it's underway, that also holds some weight, and scoring is reflective of that. Just to add the ITEP grant application, the funding cycle is 2 years. So the call for project is in 2026, and then the next one will not be until 2028. I did a little bit of looking around, and the pool this year for an ITEP for ITEP funding is 150 million. So it's a well-funded grant program. So all of that said, we're looking to extend the village pathway, as I mentioned, on purpose from Sunset Grove north, then to go on to Gilmer, and then up to Diamond Lake Road. It'd be a multi-year, multi-phase project. The idea is to extend the existing pathway system that's in Sunset, and then just logically continue it to the north to build that spine. The village does have in its budget $182,000 for the phase 1 engineering for the first segment, which is red on your handout, and that is from Aptekissick to Route 22. And as Trustee O'Connor mentioned in her report at the last meeting, there is some economy of scale to completing a phase 1 engineering from Aptekissick Road all the way up to Gilmer Road, to the tune of a savings of about $55,000 on this. So like I said, the village has $182,000 in its budget to do a phase 1 study from Aptekissick to 22. And then if in a subsequent year to do Route 22 to Gilmer would be $164,000. So if you did them together, it's not 346,000, which is the combination of the two. It's 291,000. So we're just kind of looking for direction on whether to pursue a phase 1 study from Aptekissick to 22 or Aptekissick all the way up to Gilmer. The table that's in the memo that's in your packet kind of outlines some of the costs, but I will just kind of highlight that with the grant funding, the village costs are about overall $2 million less than if they don't get a grant. And like I said, the phase 1 gets you in line and in the program, if you will, to apply for score better, and it's a prerequisite to get federal funding. So if that's I think that's a background to kind of stop right there and see where the discussion goes.
Can I just ask, I was going to ask a clarifying question. So the clarifying question is, if we do we do the Aptekissick, Illinois Route 22, and then 1 mile, and then there's 0.85 miles from Illinois 22 to Gilmer, and we do those together, it's $291,000 in engineering fees, correct?
291 if you do them together, correct?
Correct. And then you show that if we did them at 2 different times separately, it would be 346.
Correct.
So you're trying to say what you're, and I'll let Rita talk, but what you're asking or suggesting to the board is to spend $291,000. And then when you look at this map, which sections is it on the map?
The 2 sections we're looking for, the first section is the red and the second is the blue. Red is 182,000 separately. The blue is 164, but you put them together, it's not the combination is the 291,000 that you.
So up there on the map on the wall,
Red and blue.
It's red and blue for $291,000. And if they were done separately, it would be 182,000 for the red and 184,000 for the blue. Is that right?
60.
Yeah. 164.
And then just on the exhibit that you have here, there's red solid and red dashed, and then there's blue solid and blue dashed. Just kind of the numbers are what what's required to go from all the way from on those segments.
whether it's the full red segment or the blue. The dashed is potential projects that would lower the costs to the village. On the red segment, the dashed is in front of the Ballybunion and Ullman property. The village is in discussions on the development of that, and a part of that discussion and eventual agreement will likely include negotiation of a pathway. So if the developer puts that in, that would be a savings to the village. Likewise, if you go north of 22, IDOT has a project to reconstruct and make some improvements to that intersection. The village has the preliminary plans for that, and village staff is in discussions about making comments on those. One would be the village would like to see the extension of the pathway on the east side of 83 as part of that project. So that, if successful, that would reduce the cost to the village. The memo has total costs because neither of those is a guarantee, but I would like to just kind of point out that could be something that could save the village some money, and something that we're going to pursue on both the red and the blue segment.
Thank you for that, Rita.
Jeff, I just had a quick question. So I get the savings of the 55,000 that we could save if we did put them together. My other question would be, are we more likely to get a grant the bigger the project is? Or does that matter? Is it better to be small? I mean, I know it's it's your best guess, I guess.
It's my best guess, but it's also, kind of knowledge of these grants that a lot of the administrators like the projects that make a splash. So
bigger would be better.
Bigger is better.
Okay. Thanks.
We may be able to coordinate one of these with 22 and Kruger.
Yeah, the state is planning the widening of 22, and that will put a path on the south side of 22 all the way from 22 even west into Kildare. But that does get to Kruger, as you know, and we've kind of talked about, Rita, there's going to be a traffic signal at North Kruger and 22. So you can get from the south side to the north side safely through a lighted crosswalk.
Or a bridge.
What's that?
A bridge.
Or
not part of the plans that IDOT plans to issue for bid this fall.
maybe they just drill an underpass for us while they're working on 22.
Yeah. And then also the 22 and 83 improvements that the state is in design of actually has a path on the south side of 22 from 83 east along the frontage of the Long Grove Forest Preserve property. So IDOT's doing a nice job of helping the overall village goal of extending and expanding the pathway system as well.
Yeah, remember years ago, Dan McConkey asked if we would be opposed to an overpass on 83.
Well, underpass was, I think, the overpass would be a fun one. I don't think any of the residents nearby would appreciate that.
Right, agree, but that came up at the time.
Right.
And I wonder if a solution there over time, you would know, Jeff, a roundabout at 83 and 22.
Yeah, I'm not, let's see, I know they did a feasibility study on that a while back, and I know President Jacob and yourself, we were in some meetings, gosh, that was a long time ago. But there was right-of-way challenges associated with that intersection improvement. I think that could have led to the ultimate decision not to pursue a roundabout there. That and sheer volume of traffic with a roundabout.
That could get interesting in my morning commute.
Yeah.
Keep going around in a circle.
Can't get left.
What'd you say?
Nothing.
All right, so I guess Trustee O'Connor is representing the Pathway Committee. You're recommending that we combine let's call it the red and the blue, phase one engineering
Yes.
for $291,000. We stacked hands in a workshop about doing this. And so I think that, I guess I'd like to hear from the trustees on what you think. Yes, no, maybe,
May I ask a question?
please.
If we were to strip out the percentage of engineering expense that is being included just to meet the grant approval aspect of it, and rather decided to fund this all of ourselves, what would we save in engineering costs? Like what percentage of the engineering cost estimate is specifically or mostly targeting being grant worthy? As Trustee Harris said 2 meetings ago or 3 meetings ago, we have the money, why don't we spend it? That just keeps resonating in my head. So why don't we just say, screw the grants and just go for this ourselves? But I don't know the answer to that question, and I wonder if you have any feeling for that.
Yeah, I mean, to get a grant, you go through the federal process of the phase one engineering, the phase two engineering, and then the ultimate construction. To have it done locally, by and large, a lot of the phase one process, you don't need to go through. You go right to the design engineering. There's portions of the phase one that are done. So for example, the site topography is done in the phase one process, and some of the environmental screening is, it's just not as rigorous, and you don't have to jump through and go through all of the IDOT checklists with that. So you wouldn't save all of the preliminary costs, but the preliminary engineering cost, the phase one, but you'd probably save probably 60% of those. The design engineering would by and large be the same, and the construction would be the same.
So what's that dollar number that we would save if we just did it for our own
180,000,
150 grand?
20% at 360.
150 grand. So it's like half the price?
I would be getting millions potentially grant.
I'm sorry, so we're at, it's 100, all right, it's $291,000 if combined, so 20% of that's only 60 grand, so I'm lost, so. What are we saving? How does it get to 150,000? Maybe I'm just not.
He's saying the phase one engineering would not, it's not as rigorous if
Okay.
you're not applying for a grant, and it would save approximately 60% of the phase one
60%
engineering.
of that, so, okay, got it.
Okay, thank you for that. I just wanted to understand it to President Jacobs' comment about locking hands at the workshop. I still think the easiest piece of this to actually implement is the Diamond Lake Road Gilmer piece. It includes a lot of communities to the north, including Indian Creek, Towner subdivision, both sides of Ravenna, of course, Stockbridge, Highwood Estates or Highwood Pines, whatever they call themselves. It would include Fields of Long Grove, could include preserves, and certainly Royal Melbourne. There's a whole bunch of homes up there, and the topography of that land is pretty flat, and there's very little density on Diamond Lake Road right now. It would be probably one of the simplest places to put a pathway in, because there's nothing there. But when you come down 83 like we're proposing here, it gets very complicated because it's 83 and you get a lot of, you get a totally different terrain there on 83 than you do up on Diamond Lake Road. So again, I'm just going to restate that because I think our constituents to the north of Long Grove need to hear that, that at least that Chris cares about we do up north. I just really struggle with focusing again down south of 22 when that piece up north is so easy to do compared to the piece down south.
I think we talked about that when we sat down. And we know when you look at the pathway map that we have paths, but a lot of them don't connect.
Right.
So what we did avoid was the $1 million pathway that goes right up Old McHenry Road to 22. We were thinking that if we start on the east side where we've been blessed with some free sidewalks, the new one on Aptekissick, that if we could connect, so to speak, we can't always get direct connections, but if we could start there, work our way north, and then head west, certainly by then, well, hopefully by then, the 22 improvements will have been done. They're putting a sidewalk in. It just seemed to be more comprehensive.
Understand when you connect it to sidewalks, but again, us people up north don't have sidewalks at all. And a pathway would take all of those communities and interconnect them instantly. And that would be the sidewalk between all of them. We don't have the luxury of the county putting stuff in on Aptekissick for us, right? So I understand your comments, Rita. Well noted. I get it.
But you're thinking from Gilmer north?
Yeah. I mean, you get Royal Melbourne, you get the fields, you get the school even. You get Highwood Pines or Highwood Estates, you get Stockbridge. You can get that up to Towner subdivision and get that whole Towner group in there as well. And then you go west and you got Indian Creek. So if you run that up Diamond Lake Road, you get all those communities that are actually connected by something. Currently, we're connected by absolutely nothing. We don't have sidewalks. We have no way in Stockbridge, we have no way for the kids from one street to get to the next street.
Right.
We just don't. And you get the Ravenna, you get the entire Ravenna complex in there because they've got the pathway from the east to the west already in place. So I just really just want to say that I wish we were doing the north side first. We could put this pathway in, I think, way easier. And the impact to the community would be huge. But more importantly, it'd be very visible and people would go, damn, that looks good. Let's finish this. Anyway, enough said.
Well, we can get alternate numbers on that.
If that's what the board would like to do.
So what, to price out the whole thing? So that we include whatever the colors are, the green and is that pink? Purple? I don't know what it is.
But what
Well, you'd have the option of,
starting north and coming south.
or you just have it so you have all of it together before you decide, and so we have all the information. I guess we'll ask Trustee Tanucci, what's your perspective, and we'll go down here and see where everyone's at.
I support doing the phase one preliminary engineering study from Aptekissick all the way to Gilmer. Although I understand what Chris was saying, I'm not sure it makes sense to have a segment up here and a segment down here and a gap in the middle. So if we're going to have a gap, that just doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, so you're supportive of what's being proposed here.
If the motion or the proposed motion on the table is going to be Aptekissick to Gilmer, I'm supporting that. If we want to look at adding in 83 and Gilmer all the way up to Diamond Lake and Indian Creek, I'm willing to look at that. I don't think it's a good idea to have a gap in the middle, though.
Of course not. Of course not.
And then Trustee O'Connor, you're recommending what's proposed, right? Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Gate?
From the perspective that we approached it.
Yeah, from the perspective that it was laid out for us in the memo and everything.
Right. I'm not opposed to, we're not opposed to starting north and coming this way.
Okay. And then Trustee Gayton?
I'm supportive of what's proposed right now.
Hey, Trustee Jamil?
Yeah, I'm supportive as well.
All right, so I would make a recommendation. I mean, there's enough support, it seems like, to get a motion to approve what's being proposed. The Aptekissick Route 22 and the Illinois Route 22 to Gilmer. But I still think we should have other numbers and understand what it costs for the other, but if somebody wants to make a motion to approve what's being put before us, please make it. Or, okay, moved by trustee O'Connor,
Second.
second by trustee Tanucci. It's a roll call vote.
Do we need to amend the budget or not? Yes. I see.
Roll call, yeah.
Trustee O'Connor.
Aye.
Trustee Tanucci.
Aye.
Trustee Borowski.
Aye.
Trustee Gayton.
Aye.
Trustee Jamil.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carried, but I still think though that if we could, can we get the study? Are you okay with getting, I'm gonna call it the green and the, I don't know what color that is.
Pink.
Pink, okay. And we should have that information too?
Yep.
But we've approved what has been proposed?
Yep.
And motion has been carried.
We had conversations with the county to figure out when they were gonna have their regular road work done on Diamond Lake, so we originally thought that would be good timing to coordinate on that, but Jeff and I can talk and we can. with
We
Rita.
could get numbers on.
We get numbers for it all, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, so item 10, I'm gonna ask that we defer. It's after 9 o'clock. These meetings should be ending by 9 per our agenda. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
It's late. And then if I could ask for the village engineer to provide us a brief update, that would be appreciated. And then we'll go around the horn really quick with our village president and trustee updates.
All right, so the engineer's reports in the board packet, I will just highlight one item. In the interest of time, the road program. I did want to mention, and this is number 2 on the report, the speed tables on Checker Road are permanent and they were installed on Friday of last week, and they were striped with some chevron markings, kind of like the temporary ones yesterday. I will just kind of like to go back to some previous discussion that the design of those speed tables was following IDOT guidelines, and that's intended to curtail speeding and not necessarily slow down people that are driving the speed limit. I know that there's been some feedback that driving over them 25 miles an hour is an okay experience and people don't need to feel like they need to slow down. But I've also heard from other folks that if you're going 30 or 35, you're feeling it. So I think that kind of balances to, what IDOT's policies are and some of the discussions that have been had at the board. As far as the rest of the road program, the pavement striping substantially complete. If you noticed, while the sun was still out, the Village Hall parking lot was restriped as part of that. So you can see where you're supposed to put your vehicle when you come to the parking lot. And only the landscaping remains, and which is pretty much cleanup. So just wanted to highlight those items tonight. And if there's any other questions or anything like that, feedback, happy to take that.
All right, end of report.
And report.
Thank you. I'll just, under my report, I'll just tell you, I did test it at 30 miles an hour. Does nothing. And I was gonna go faster, but I didn't try it yet. But
We have a new lieutenant here, so.
yeah, so
Yeah, I've got rigid suspension of a pickup, so 30 miles an hour is about as
it
much
was
as I
like
want to try.
nothing. I couldn't feel it. So I'm just telling you, I got some, if you haven't driven it, drive it. I don't know if the fear of the stripes will make it different. It was not striped, so. Okay, end of my report, trustee Borowski.
Nothing.
Trustee Gayton.
Just things happening downtown Long Grove. This Sunday, Newman's is having their Cars and Cigars Support Special Olympics. It's Sunday from 11 to 3. It's a great event. And then next weekend is Vintage Days, Saturday and Sunday, where they blocked off the street by the bridge, and it's my wife's favorite event. So, and that ends report.
Thank you. I can't believe it's Vintage Days already. Summer's just flying, unbelievable. Trustee Jamil. Trustee O'Connor.
My report ended when Jeff stopped talking.
You did what, sir?
my report ended when.
Oh, we just stopped talking. Okay, yeah. Good report. All right, trustee Tanucci.
No report.
All right, village manager Sparkman.
Nothing to add.
All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by trustee O'Connor, seconded by trustee Jamil. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned. Good night, everyone. Thank you.